All right. Hopefully the sound is okay. Um, I'm going to take inspiration from a philosopher I follow named Vlad Vexler and just like try to record stuff sometimes, like from bed, even when I'm not feeling well. He's like very ill and immobilized, and so if he can manage to do that much, I figure I don't have much excuse. But I feel a need to speak because I see people online and in the culture writ large, you know, finally talking about Palantir and realizing that, effectively any right to privacy has already been abolished. They've already stolen every piece of information they possibly can about you. In the first term, they made it legal right away. Like in 2017, they made it legal to sell your personal information, between third parties, and no matter how it's obtained. Now there's actually a government-sponsored, marketplace to do it. And of course, when Elon went in and took over, stole everyone's tax returns, IRS, and copied all that. In case you're wondering why you got, started getting all these scam phone calls all of a sudden that you weren't getting before. So people, are finally starting to learn about who is Peter Thiel, what is Palantir, this like monstrosity that was created after the Patriot Act that was supercharged by Obama, putting unlimited money to these guys so I can be cool making these Afrikaners from Silicon Valley eat out of the palm of my hand and So while I don't bail out homeowners, I'll just print unlimited money for these Nazis to develop technologies to try to enslave humanity. Yeah. So how does it work though? Because I think people here, their idea is a bit stuck in the past, and that it's just this Big Brother panopticon kind of idea that people have in their minds. Like, well, okay, they stole all our information. Like, what are they trying to? They're just trying to watch us all the time. No, we're past that point. Like 50 years ago is when like the government was starting to think about like how do we watch people all the time, and they had a long way to go. Like, imagine what just Arthur Enslinger or like J.E. Hoover would have done for like to have the situation today where people carry around cameras and microphones on their person like voluntarily. Everyone. But by the way, in terms of facial recognition software, creating asymmetry is important to help thwart that software's capability to recognize faces. And that's maybe prosaic of what I want to talk about. So no, Palantir is not just about watching you in the present, and it's not just about cataloging your past. That is the initial step of what they're about, and aggregating information, and that's part of what's going on now under the direction of Russell Vogt and the Heritage Foundation, Federalist Society, and the fascist conspiracy called Project 2025, which is just an iteration of plans that have been in motion since the Nixon days. But methodologically speaking, this is based on the supposition that when they know enough about you, it's not just that they can watch you and detect any sedition, any defiance of their will and punish it, or even preempt it. Yes, it's like Captain America 2, Winter Soldier, like Project Insight. That is some people. So I've seen some people, they mention that movie and they get the near term part of it. So yes, think of it that way. Step one is to aggregate all the information and to be sort of omnipresent, to always, Big Brother is watching you. Step two is they then want to be able to identify even preemptively who are the people that we will find a nuisance, who are the people that will, pose any potential threat to, our complete monopoly and ownership of the human race, and eliminate those people, right? Like that's, and the CEO of Palantir was already talking about this, like basically talking about a mass, like a hemisphere-wide Holocaust of what he calls commies, which wouldn't just include like Marxists and communists and socialists, but as far as he's concerned, like pretty much anyone that isn't a Nazi, like that, they just call everyone commie. If you like care whether your neighbor lives or dies, you're a commie. So it's going to be a lot of people, but what's the grand picture of the future? Because even once they kill all the people they want to kill, what do they want to have left to rule, and how do they want to rule it? And what you have to understand is that it's not just about watching you and judging you, and studying your past, but it's about they want to be able to predict and then ultimately manipulate and control what you do in the future. And they believe that with the right data and the right methodology, that they will be able to do this. They will be able to forecast the behavior of individuals, of groups, of governments, of nations, of economies, and identify the pressure points where they can exert force and have a wide-reaching effect. But they also believe that that's something that's possible to do on the scale of an individual human life. You understand? Like, they want to turn you into their own personal Sims character. There was that game that was very popular. I don't know if people still play it, from the same people that made SimCity. Turn of the century, it was very popular, right? Where you make these little virtual people, and I was the sort of like in school, I was the sort of kid that, so I say, multiple of my classmates made Sims characters of me just to torment them. But it was a common. Well, that's what Peter Thiel and Elon Musk ultimately want to do to all of humanity, or what's left of it, when they're done with their purges. Is it's not enough for them to rule you. It's not enough for them even to own you, but that they want to really be the author of you. I mean, they already claim to have like a copyright on your DNA if you did 23andMe, like literally. But they want to own you in a more comprehensive sense than anyone's ever owned anything. Even under chattel slavery. What they're talking about now is even more pervasive than that. Because they really want to be able to influence everything, every part of your life, while remaining unseen as they do it. And using, the tools of money and economy and anonymity and state power were state power structures to do it. So is it possible? Well, let me put it this way. What it's possible for them to do, potentially, should be enough, plenty enough to scare you, even if they weren't Nazis. Even if they weren't Nazis. But they are, so, yeah. It's scary to imagine these people having a crystal ball. They literally name themselves after the evil thing from Lord of the Rings, like these Palantir that Sauron uses to warp people's minds and trick all the rulers of the world into destroying their own countries, etc. That's what they name their own company. So how do they do that? All right. How do I do this without starting to talk like a philosophy major? They rely on something called Bayes' theorem, which has to do with trying to work backwards from knowing the effect and then working backwards to the cause, as compared to the sort of default approach to like conditional probability, trying to figure out the likelihood of something, like the betting on a horse race, where it's like, we have available data about the horses, and we're trying to project now which one is going to win. So it's like an approach to working backwards in that way. So basically, and it came out of scientific experimentation, where the idea is, developing a formal method by which one can refine hypotheses as more information becomes available to them. But so the first thing to understand is that they believe that it's sort of like they're trying to see the future, but to get there, they're trying to start by working backwards. And they want to be able, because if they know how to see the effect of something and then work backwards to the cause, in other words, they start with the effect that they want to avoid in society or in a life, or the effect, the effect that they want to create, and then they work backwards trying to determine what are the variables that must be in order to generate that state of affairs. And then if they can do that, that gives them their priors for the next time, because human beings are iterative, like everything else in our world. Like a tree, the twig on a tree is like a miniature iteration of the branch, which is an iteration of the limb of the tree, which is an iteration of the tree as a whole, right? And our lives are like that. We go in our little loops and our little patterns that form bigger concentric patterns. And societies do the same, right? And so the thing is about this is it's sort of the idea, right now they're very far away from the level of control that they desire, this like truly kind of omnipotent control. But the idea is, that once they get good enough at sort of working backwards from, all right, what is the future we want to create? And then, working backwards to the variables we need to establish to do it. They'll get a lot better at, it'll snowball. So how to avoid that? When they're vacuuming up every piece of information they can get about you, your financial records, your phone records. NSA, of course, we've known for 20 years has got everyone's been logging all of everyone's emails and any phone call, even potentially involving a party overseas. So they're still aggregating all of that. Like that process is still going on. And now they're getting their hands on everyone's tax information from Elon. And then now they're trying to get everyone's medical data, which in England, the frickin' National Health Service over there has been insane enough to contract with Palantir, which, I mean, not that I'm one to try to forestall the downfall of the English Empire, but not smart, not smart at all. I know, by the way, at the same time, we'll have an anti-queer hysteria, something they do in one country or another every 50 years or so, like have an anti-queer genocide. But the English Empire, often it was in the colonies. But now, they've decided people need to have their DNA sequenced before they can take a piss in England and Scotland and Ireland, which is under English control. So, gosh, that's totally worth surrendering your genetic information, everyone in the country, to Peter Thiel and Palantir. Brilliant. That way you won't be, you can avoid pissing in a stall next to a person you consider an inferior mongrel Untermensch, and all you had to give up is the freedom of your children and your children's children. Cool. Well, I'm getting close to 15 minutes now. So what do I want to come away with? Bayes' theorem, and I can't say Google it because it's probability theory is like a very dense and complicated subject, and I'm not. You may or may not get a lot out of reading like a Wikipedia article about it, but just be familiar with the basic concept and the idea of how these tech companies now are trying to develop this idea of predictive algorithms and where that comes from, because it's not actually a new thing. right? It's something that mathematicians and philosophers and logicians and scientists, researchers have been trying to develop formal systems for, thinking about these things for hundreds of years, just like computer code itself is based on formal symbolic logic. So understand that basic concept. And then while they're vacuuming up all our data, and you can try to get on those services that scrub your data from the deep web and all of that. At this point, with actual states having been completely compromised, including the USA having now been basically acquired as private property, and these creeps having everything, having all everyone's information directly from the state, like that is kind of a losing game at this point. You actually want to hope that they're trying to ingest so much data at once that they choke on it. And they don't know how to discriminate. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but like part of the irony is going to be that the approach that they've developed, which is built around the whole point of Bayes' theorem, as it was for scientists and as it appealed to certain like religious people and religious philosophers and theologians, was precisely that it was about developing a system that would let you like reach a solid hypothesis or a solid explanation of something, or I should say a degree of certainty about something without having a whole lot of data. Like it was like, okay, if we don't have a lot of junk, if we want to determine does the existence of the New Testament, to what degree does that reliably establish like these miraculous events that were described therein, this rabbi coming back from the dead, etc. Like it's an approach that came out of like, okay, we have 6 or 7 written testimonials to go off of, and a smattering of circumstantial historical facts. What can we infer with just that relatively small bit of data? And so, but the irony is that the thought process behind it in the design stages came out of this, like, we're going to do inverse probability, and we're going to rely on a method where we can extrapolate and work around the data that we don't have until we can eventually, like, triangulate and infer it, and then we refine as we go. And yet now how do these tech bros act in the world as organisms? Stupid. It's the opposite way. It's very much like we're just going to be a big vacuum cleaner, a big hungry hippopotamus that gobbles up literally all the data. And that is going to be, I think, an important thing to understand, that as always, they're acting in a somewhat paradoxical way. Because they're not as intelligent as they want you to believe, and that is exactly why they are building machines to be the tyrants for them, so they can screw around and do ketamine and diddle kids and whatever they do. They listen to some smart people, and that's important not to underestimate or gainsay. Like these guys, Peter Thiel listens to very smart people. He learns from very smart people. He knows how to recognize very smart people sometimes. Curtis Yarvin is a sophist and a clown, and I think Peter Thiel knows that and just finds him useful. But none of these guys are what they make themselves out to be. That's why they're desperate to try to make themselves gods, because they sure ain't now. All right, but yeah, I mean, it is time to be afraid. And yes, like they do want to put you in. You best start believing in ghost stories. You're in one, okay? They do want to put you in a sci-fi dystopia. And I will do my best to share my theoretical understanding of how, and then hence what you can do to try to make yourself less visible, in the same way that a stealth airplane is less visible to radar. It's not invisible. You can't hide from the person's eye, but how do you hide from the machine?